Have you ever felt that something was off in her behavior, but you couldn't quite put your finger on it? Sometimes it's not about what she says, but about the small changes in her actions that reveal the truth. Let me ask you, have you ever ignored your gut feeling about someone, only to realize later you were right all along? Share your story in the comments. You might help another man trust his instincts. Female psychology shows us that intimacy leaves emotional, physical, and behavioral traces. A woman who has just slept with someone else may not admit it outright, but her patterns often shift in ways she cannot completely hide. These aren't wild guesses. They are grounded in human behavior and the natural responses of guilt, secrecy, or emotional detachment. In this video, we'll break down 6 key signs that reveal when a woman has been with someone else. By the end, you'll understand not just the surface behaviors, but the psychology behind them, so you can see the truth clearly instead of being blinded by excuses. One of the first and most noticeable signs that a woman may have been with someone else is a sudden shift in her emotional energy. Normally, people have consistent patterns in how they greet, interact, and carry themselves. But when something significant happens, like intimacy with another person, those patterns change, often without her realizing it. Psychologists explain this through the concept of emotional leakage. When someone experiences a strong event, especially one tied to secrecy, their emotions can't stay completely hidden. Even if her words sound normal, her overall vibe, her energy feels different. She may seem unusually distant, distracted, or on the other hand, overly cheerful, as if trying to cover something up. Consider a real example. A man notices that his partner, who normally greets him warmly and comfortably, suddenly seems restless and distracted. She avoids deeper conversation and seems to be elsewhere mentally. Alternatively, she might overcompensate, acting unusually lively or affectionate, because she subconsciously wants to divert attention away from the change. Either extreme, the cold distance or the forced brightness, signals that something is off. From a Stoic perspective, the wise man doesn't panic at these changes but observes calmly. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that human behavior follows causes. Nothing shifts without a reason. If her energy changes drastically without explanation, it's worth paying attention, not with anger, but with clarity. Modern psychology also ties this to cognitive dissonance. When someone's actions and values conflict, they often show signs of discomfort. A woman who has been unfaithful or has secrets will unconsciously project that inner conflict in her emotions, making her either more detached or strangely enthusiastic. The key here is consistency. One off day doesn't mean much. But when her emotional tone changes repeatedly and doesn't align with her usual behavior, it's a red flag. It suggests she's carrying something new within her that she hasn't shared. So here's the reflection. Have you ever felt that someone's energy was different, even before you knew the reason why? Share your story in the comments. You may help others trust that their instincts often notice shifts long before their mind accepts the truth. Another strong indicator that something has changed is when a woman suddenly avoids eye contact or begins acting more secretive than usual. Human beings naturally maintain a certain level of openness with those they trust, especially in close relationships. When that openness fades, it often signals that she is hiding something, whether guilt, shame, or fear of being discovered. Psychologists call this nonverbal leakage. Even if someone carefully chooses their words, their body language often reveals more than they intend. A woman who once looked you straight in the eyes when speaking might suddenly glance away, fidget, or focus too much on her phone. The avoidance of eye contact is her subconscious way of shielding herself from being seen. A practical example illustrates this well. Imagine you ask her a simple question about her day. Instead of her usual relaxed answer, she shifts uncomfortably, avoids your gaze, and quickly changes the subject. Or she might give short, vague responses and rush to close the conversation. These behaviors aren't always proof of betrayal, but they are unusual deviations from her normal rhythm. Stoicism teaches that we must observe without attachment. Epictetus said, Nature has given us 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we may listen more and talk less. In situations like this, the Stoic response is not to accuse blindly, but to notice the changes with calm clarity. If her secrecy becomes a pattern, it points to deeper truths that words alone won't reveal. Psychological studies on guilt also show that people under emotional pressure often seek to create physical barriers. For instance, she may suddenly start guarding her phone, locking screens faster, or avoiding being in the same space when you're nearby. These behaviors are protective, designed to prevent discovery. It's important to remember that 1 or 2 private habits are normal in any relationship. But when secrecy suddenly increases, especially alongside avoidance of eye contact, it suggests a shift in trust and transparency. That's not coincidence. It's her inner conflict showing through. So here's the reflection. Have you ever noticed someone becoming more guarded with their phone, their space, or their eye contact after a major change in their life? Share in the comments. You may help others realize that secrecy often speaks louder than words. Another subtle but telling sign is when her physical appearance suddenly seems different, almost too refreshed, in a way that doesn't match the circumstances. Intimacy often leaves lingering effects on a person's body and energy. A woman who has just slept with someone else may unconsciously reveal it through her appearance, her glow, or the way she carries herself afterward. Psychologists link this to what's often called the afterglow effect. Studies have shown that physical intimacy releases oxytocin and endorphins, which can temporarily elevate mood, relax tension, and even alter body language. This natural hormonal shift can make someone appear more relaxed, more radiant, or unusually at ease, even if she tries to mask it. A simple example illustrates this clearly. Imagine she comes home after claiming to be just tired from errands, but instead of looking worn out, she looks unusually fresh. Her hair is styled differently, her skin seems glowing, or her demeanor carries a calm, satisfied energy. The mismatch between the story and the appearance is what raises suspicion. From a Stoic perspective, the wise man does not rush to judgment, but he also doesn't ignore inconsistencies. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. Likewise, the body reflects the state of the mind and emotions." If her outward appearance consistently contradicts her explanations, a Stoic observer takes note with calm reason. Another layer of this behavior comes in how she handles compliments. If you mention that she looks different, she may act unusually defensive or dismissive, because deep down she fears her afterglow is too visible. This defensiveness itself can be a giveaway. It's important to clarify. Looking refreshed or glowing doesn't automatically mean betrayal. People can feel better after sleep, self-care, or exercise. But when her physical state doesn't align with the reality she presents, and when it happens repeatedly, it becomes a sign worth paying attention to. So here's the reflection. Have you ever seen someone's appearance completely contradict the explanation they gave you? Share your experience in the comments. You may help another man recognize that the body often speaks when words stay silent. A common psychological sign of hidden guilt is defensiveness. When a woman has done something she doesn't want discovered, like being intimate with someone else, she may become unusually defensive or irritable, even over small questions. Instead of responding calmly, she reacts as if she's being accused because in her mind, she's already battling her own guilt. Psychologists describe this as projection. When someone feels internal conflict, they project it outward, interpreting neutral questions as threats. For example, you might ask something simple like, "How was your evening?" And instead of a normal answer, she snaps back with, "Why are you interrogating me?" The question wasn't aggressive, but her guilty conscience makes her treat it as one. A real-world example makes this clear. Imagine she used to tell you stories about her day without hesitation. Suddenly, she gets irritated when you ask, avoids details, or flips the question back on you. Why do you even care? This defensive wall isn't about your words, it's about the secret she's trying to protect. From a Stoic perspective, a man must approach this shift with calm observation rather than emotional reaction. Epictetus advised, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." If her irritability is new and consistent, it's worth noting carefully instead of being swept away by anger or denial. The Stoic way is to see patterns clearly, not to excuse or explode. Psychology also notes that guilt creates irritability because it increases stress hormones. The brain, under pressure, becomes hyper-reactive to anything that feels like exposure. That's why a guilty person can turn small, harmless questions into arguments. Because deep inside, they're carrying a truth they don't want uncovered. It's important to separate ordinary stress from chronic defensiveness. Everyone has bad days, but if irritation consistently appears whenever you ask basic questions, the issue may not be stress, it may be secrecy. So here's the reflection. Have you ever noticed someone getting irritated by the simplest questions, as if your curiosity itself was a threat? Share your thoughts in the comments. You might help another man realize that defensiveness often reveals more than it hides. Sometimes guilt doesn't appear as anger or distance. It shows up as excessive kindness. A woman who has crossed a boundary may suddenly become more affectionate, caring, or overly attentive. This shift isn't always about genuine love. Often, it's her subconscious attempt to balance the guilt she feels. Psychologists call this behavior compensatory affection. Imagine this scenario. For weeks, she was distant or even uninterested, but suddenly she greets you with extra warmth, cooks your favorite meal, or showers you with compliments. On the surface, it feels nice, but the timing feels strange. It's a drastic change with no clear reason. That inconsistency can be a signal that she is trying to soothe her conscience while hiding something from you. From a psychological standpoint, guilt often pushes people toward acts of overcompensation. By being unusually kind, she convinces both herself and you that everything is normal. The problem is that this kindness often feels unnatural, too much, too sudden, or disconnected from her usual behavior. It's less about you and more about her trying to silence the discomfort inside. A Stoic perspective brings clarity here. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." True kindness flows naturally, not out of guilt or fear. The Stoic man doesn't get blinded by sudden affection, but observes whether it's consistent over time. If kindness appears only after suspicious gaps or changes, it's not affection, it's concealment. Another layer is the timing. Often the wave of kindness comes directly after unexplained absences or secretive behavior. If she was unreachable or evasive one day and then unusually sweet the next, it could be her way of covering tracks. Of course, genuine kindness exists in healthy relationships. But when it arrives as a sudden, exaggerated shift, especially paired with other red flags, it's worth questioning the motive behind it. So here's the reflection. Have you ever experienced someone treating you with unexpected, almost too much kindness after a period of secrecy or distance? Share in the comments. You may help others recognize that affection can sometimes be a mask for guilt. One of the strongest signs that something has shifted is when her intimacy toward you suddenly feels different. Intimacy in a healthy relationship carries familiarity, comfort, and consistency. But when a woman has been with someone else, the way she engages with you physically or emotionally may noticeably change. It's not always about absence. Sometimes it's about the presence of something new that feels unfamiliar. Psychologists call this behavioral displacement. When someone's emotional or physical energy has been invested elsewhere, their patterns change in their primary relationship. She may become distant, less affectionate, less interested, or quick to avoid closeness. On the other hand, she may suddenly become more experimental or act in ways that don't align with her usual behavior, because she is carrying over dynamics from another experience. A practical example. You notice she avoids your touch or turns intimacy into something rushed and mechanical rather than genuine. Or suddenly she introduces new moves, phrases, or behaviors you've never seen from her before without explanation. Both extremes point to the same reality. Intimacy no longer feels like it belongs only to you. From a Stoic perspective, the wise man doesn't get lost in emotional reaction, but notices the truth calmly. Epictetus reminded us, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. In this case, if her intimacy feels inconsistent or foreign, it's not about jumping to accusations, it's about aligning your perception with reality, then deciding what you must do with clarity. Psychology also links this shift to guilt and divided attention. When someone invests intimacy outside their main relationship, they struggle to maintain the same natural flow with their partner. This creates either avoidance, to reduce guilt, or overcompensation, to hide guilt. Either way, the difference is felt, not just seen. The key here is intuition. Many men ignore their gut when they sense intimacy has changed, but our subconscious often notices the smallest shifts in tone, touch, or rhythm. Ignoring those instincts often leads to regret later because the body and mind register truths long before the heart accepts them. So here's the reflection. Have you ever felt that someone's closeness to you changed, even if they never admitted why? Share your story in the comments. You may help another man learn to trust his instincts when intimacy no longer feels the same. Human behavior always leaves traces. A woman may not admit what she's done, but her emotional shifts, secrecy, appearance, defensiveness, guilt-driven kindness, and even the way she shows intimacy all reveal patterns that speak louder than words. Female psychology teaches us that consistency is truth. When her behavior changes suddenly and repeatedly, it's rarely without reason. Stoicism reminds us to face reality with clarity, not denial. The wise man doesn't react with blind anger, nor does he ignore the signs. He observes calmly, accepts what is in front of him, and makes decisions that protect his peace and dignity. Remember, your instincts and observations exist for a reason. Don't silence them. If this message gave you clarity, share your reflections in the comments. And to show me you stayed until the end, write "Psi Insight" below. Your voice may help another man see clearly what he's been trying to ignore.